Good morning, everyone. We're going to talk about AI, and I want to start today's presentation with a study that recently came out. And in this study, researchers wanted to see who would diagnose medical patients most accurately. So they had three groups: they had doctors without AI, they had doctors with AI, and they had AI on its own. And all three groups were given the same information, and then they measured how accurate the diagnoses were. So quick show of hands. Who here thinks group number one got the highest accuracy, the doctors without AI? Okay, I see no hands. Who thinks it was group number two, the doctors with AI? And who here thinks it was group number three, the AI on its own? Okay, if you just had your hand up, you're correct. It was AI on its own. I got 92% of the diagnoses right. The doctors with AI got 74%, and the doctors without got 72%. Now, two things I find really interesting about this. The first, of course, is that AI is already outperforming doctors on some of their core competencies. And if you're wondering, I'm not telling you to stop going to the doctors and ask ChatGPT. That would be a really bad idea. Please don't do that. But the second thing that I found more interesting is that the doctors that had access to AI were not much better than the ones that didn't, only 2% better, right? And the takeaway for all of us here is that having access to these tools is not enough. We have to actually learn how to use them to get the value from them. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to cover three things. Just quickly, what AI is and why it's a big deal. And we'll talk about what it means for real estate agents. And lastly, we'll talk about 6 steps you can take to master AI in your business. This is how I explain AI. It's important that you understand at a high level how it works. Okay? There are 4 layers that are required to create AI. At the bottom, you have computer chips and GPUs made by companies like NVIDIA. If you invested in NVIDIA 4 years ago, you would have made a fortune. I hope some of you did. Layer number 2 is the data infrastructure made by companies like Microsoft and Google. AI needs a lot of data to run on, and so they allow us to store it and organize it. And then the third layer here, the large language models, is generally what we talk about when we say AI, when we talk about the intelligence. And there's a few companies that make these large language models, including OpenAI and Anthropic. And then at the top, you have the application layer. And these are the applications that all of us interact with when we're using these tools. And there are thousands, tens of thousands of these tools, and they're all built on the same LLMs. Right? So as the LLMs get better, the applications get better as well. All right, so why is AI a big deal? I think at this point, we all have an intuition that this is an important technology. Here's a quote from the founder of Google's DeepMind project. He says, "In the future, I think we will see AI as the most transformative invention humanity has ever created, more profound than electricity or the internet." I think that's right. I think that's the right way to think about AI. It is an enabling technology like electricity and like the internet. So think about all of the ways the internet has impacted how we all work, right? Because of the internet, we got email, we got online search, mobile phones, e-signature, all of the tools that you use every single day. And very similarly, just like the internet, AI will transform how all of us do our work. So why is that? Why is it so important? For 2 reasons. The first is that AI is the first technology we've ever had that can do human knowledge work end to end. We've never had that before. And then secondly, it's improving at an exponential rate. So every 6 months, the underlying models get 2 times smarter. So we're on this exponential curve, and we're still very, very early with most of the growth ahead of us. And we're seeing the impact of this already, primarily with startups. So if you look at some of the AI native companies that have been launched recently, they're growing much faster than any companies in history. So it took DocuSign back in the day about 12 years to go from 0 to 100 million in revenue. It took Shopify about 8 years. And then most recently, companies like Cursor or Wiz, which are AI native companies, have gotten there in less than 2 years. Companies are growing much faster, and they have very different cost structures. They don't need to hire as many people in order to grow. So what does it mean for all of us in this room? I believe AI will impact every single step in the real estate value chain. So from how research is done, to how homes are designed and developed, to how they're constructed, to how they're marketed and sold, and eventually managed. Every step in that value chain is getting more efficient, and all of the tools used by all of you and by companies in the real estate sector are being reinvented with AI at their core. So the analogy I want to give you for where this is all going and where we are is that of a car. So in the past, we had manual cars. You had to get a driver's license and learn how to drive and then take yourself from A to B. In recent years, we've had most cars with driver assistance. In fact, 90% of cars are now made with driver assistance. So if you're on the highway, it helps you stay in your lane, which makes driving a little bit easier, but you're still the one driving. And of course, we all know where this is going, right? Self-driving is coming. We're already seeing the Waymos in cities around the country. Software, and real estate software in particular, is going through a very similar evolution. So in the past, you had manual tools that you had to learn to do a particular task. Now, in the recent 1 or 2 years, we've seen companies come out with AI assistants. And they make the day-to-day work and doing those tasks easier, but you're still fundamentally the one doing those tasks. Now, what's coming is autonomous AI specialists, right? You hear about agentic AI, AI agents, AI specialists. That's where this is going. And this is autonomous software that can do the work end to end. You give it a goal, you give it access to tasks, and it can do the job. So this is a little bit like hiring a superstar employee into your business. Someone who has deep expertise in the role you're hiring them for, who has perfect memory, who continues to improve over time, and who never takes a sick day and works 24/7. That is the future of where AI is going, where AI tools are going. I love this quote. The future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. There are companies right now, including my team at Luxury Presence, who are building this future. And every time I travel to San Francisco to meet with our engineers, this is how I feel. The future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. Now, I want to give you some tactical things as well. So we're going to talk about 6 steps you can take to master AI in your business. Step number 1 is to develop your knowledge. It all starts with knowledge. And this space is moving incredibly fast. It can be overwhelming. All of the tools, all of the headlines to stay on top of it all. Heck, I feel overwhelmed, and I work in tech. So you have to actually make the time. I block out a couple hours every week to stay on top of the headlines and to try new tools. The best way to learn is to actually try these tools yourself. The second thing you can do is partner with the right talent, with people that are enthusiastic about using AI. So if you're running a team and you're hiring someone into your team, ask them, what AI tools are you using every day? Make sure it's people that are excited to learn these technologies. And if you're partnering with vendors, specifically tech vendors, ask them about their AI strategy. Ask them how many AI engineers to have on their team. Make sure they actually understand where this future is going, because over the next few years, we will see a divergence between those companies that use AI and everyone else. In order to stay up to date, one of my favorite things is to follow a few thought leaders that are really at the cutting edge. Here are 3 that I very much enjoy. Reid Hoffman, he's the founder of LinkedIn, absolute visionary when it comes to AI. Andrew Yang is fantastic at breaking down complex technology questions. And then Ali Miller is great at advice for business owners and startups when it comes to AI. So step number 2 is to capture your data and processes, to start documenting the things that you do in your business. If you're someone who keeps all of your information about how you operate and about your clients in your head, you're going to have a hard time implementing AI. So start putting it on paper, start putting systems in place. There are 3 tools that I would suggest you start with. The first one is a call transcription tool. I use a tool called Granola. It runs on every one of my phone calls and Zoom calls. So for the last 18 months, most of my phone calls have been captured, and I get action items, transcripts that I can later analyze, and it helps me gather all of that valuable data. The second tool is a voice dictation software. Right? For a lot of meetings, especially in the luxury space, it's not appropriate to record it live. Right? So you want to have a tool where when you're stepping out of the meeting, you can actually voice record and make sure what was said in the meeting is being captured. And then lastly, if you don't have a CRM already, make sure you get one. Make sure you're tracking contact activity, because all of this data is incredibly useful, and we'll talk about in a second about how you can use this data. Step number 3 is to start using ChatGPT as a thought partner. Most people are using ChatGPT the wrong way. They use it like a search engine. And what I want to suggest to you is that you start treating it like you would a business consultant or an executive coach. So to have conversations with it. In order to do that, you have to give it context and data, and you have to give it a detailed prompt or instruction for what you want, and then you can ask follow-up questions and go back and forth. I'll give you one example from my world. I recently interviewed for a head of legal, and I had 2 candidates in the final stage of the process. And before the interviews, I uploaded all of my transcripts from the interviews into ChatGPT, and I said, what are the 2 blind spots I have about these candidates? And what are 5 questions I can ask to eliminate those blind spots? Made for a great interview, and I think I made a great decision hiring the right person. Here's another example that would be relevant to many of you. If you're going into a call with a client or into a negotiation, you can upload your notes and transcripts and ask it to predict the questions that the client will likely ask. You can even have it write your negotiation strategy, right? So go back and forth and use it as a thought partner. Step number 4 is to use AI to scale your personal outreach. AI is incredible at 2 things. One is doing research on both individuals and companies. I use ChatGPT's deep research feature almost every day. It can find great information on individuals that you might want to work with or prospect, and you can use that information to then inform your outreach. And then the second thing it's great at is, of course, writing and generating messages. And I would suggest that you spend the time once to set up your ChatGPT with your tone of voice guide and some examples of your past emails so that it can learn how you want to sound. Makes it a lot easier to create ongoing communication. Here's a fun example I came up with. I live in LA, and I'm a big basketball fan, and recently my favorite player, Luka Doncic, was traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. So let's assume for a second I was an agent in LA, and I work with athletes, and I wanted to get in touch with Luka Doncic. I would go to ChatGPT, I would do a prompt like this, and ask for some thoughtful ways of getting in touch with him. Here's what I came up with. He gave me 9 different ways of getting in touch, including the name of his agent, the agent's assistant, his business manager, the Lakers player services, his foundation. Lots of creative ideas as a starting point for how you could reach out. And then it came up with an email. It's not perfect, but with some minor editing, I would feel comfortable sending that out. All right, step number 5 is to position your brand for an AI-first world. Consumer behavior is going to change because of this technology. We're already starting to see this. People are going to ChatGPT to find products and services, right? Everyone used to go to Google, and the vast majority of people still do. But you're starting to see more and more people go to ChatGPT, and they go, and here's another example. I might go and ask, who's the top real estate agent in Beverly Hills? After thinking about it for 2 minutes and 12 seconds, here's what it told me, Jade Mills, who was on a panel earlier and who's a longtime client of ours. So you might be wondering, why is Jade showing up here, and what can you do to ensure that your brand in the future shows up when people search for these kind of phrases in ChatGPT? So here are the 6 most important things. One is your press mentions. So any authoritative online sources that write about you will help you show up in ChatGPT. 2 is your online reviews. If you're not already generating online reviews and positive sentiment online, start doing that. 3 is an LLM optimized website. So there's some technical implications, some things that you should do about your website that makes it easier for ChatGPT to understand the content. 4 is unique data. Whenever you can provide unique data and unique insights, say in the blog posts that you publish on your website, that tends to perform really well in ChatGPT. ChatGPT likes structured content, it likes citations, it likes sources, so make sure they include that. And then lastly, if you can get a Wikipedia page set up, if you have some notoriety, that's something that gets often cited by ChatGPT as well. And then this is maybe the most impactful, but also the most difficult step. Adopt tools that automate repetitive tasks. The way I approach this in my business is I keep a list of all of my recurring tasks. So anytime I do something more than once, I put it on that list. And then once a month, I sit down and I do some research and I see what tools are out there, what AI tools can I deploy to start automating some of these tasks. And I start with the low stakes ones, the ones where if the AI makes a mistake, it's not that big of a deal, like video editing or maybe lead nurturing for your online leads. Those are great places to start where you can look for tools that can do that for you and give you time back. Another thing I do is I have a team member who's dedicated, who thinks about this all the time, right? So in our world, we call it AI ops, AI operations. So if you have an assistant, charge them with keeping track of this for you and reporting back to you every month or every week. Here are my favorite AI tools, the ones that I use almost every day. I use OpenAI, ChatGPT for writing. I like Perplexity or ChatGPT Deep Research for doing research. Claude is great for legal reviews. Please don't fire your attorney. Still work with an attorney on any important contracts. But it's great for understanding a contract, asking questions about it. Luxury Presence, my company, has great solutions for all things marketing, from lead nurturing to SEO to blogging, all AI powered. So check that out. For voice dictation, I'm using Whisperflow. I've started to actually dictate most of my emails. So I write less. It's about 4 times faster to dictate them. Granola is my transcription tool. Midjourney for image generation. And then Opus Clip lets you take long-form content and turn that into short social clips. And it even gives you a virality score for each one, so you know which one is likely to perform best in social media. So we've covered a lot. And a lot of change is going to happen. There's no question about that. And change can feel overwhelming. It can feel scary. But the reason why I'm confident that in 5 years I will still go to the doctor and I will still hire a real estate agent to sell my home is because some things will never be replaced by AI. The trusted relationships that all of you build with your clients will never be replaced by AI, right? AI cannot genuinely care. By definition, it cannot care, but you all do. And that's something that humans will always value. So what I would encourage you all to do is embrace AI, go all in, use it to free up your time to do all the things you don't enjoy doing, so you can get that time back and you can spend it on the things that matter most. Thank you.